My, how colorful.
Remember when after-school TV meant racing home, dropping your backpack by the door, and flipping on Fox Kids to hang out with 5 teenagers with attitude in Angel Grove? Jason, Kimberly, Zack, Trini, Billy, and then 17 episodes in, that new kid Tommy showed up and instantly took over every lunchroom conversation in America. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers hit in 1993 like a flying sidekick straight to the brain. Dinosaurs, giant robots, rubber suit monsters, and a battle cry that permanently welded "It's Morphin' Time" into your brain. Over 3 seasons, this low-budget mashup of American teen drama and Japanese Super Sentai footage turned into a full-blown cultural takeover. Austin St. John, Thuy Trang, Walter Jones, Amy Jo Johnson, David Yost, and eventually Jason David Frank, they were the kids we wished we went to school with, who also happened to pilot giant dinosaur Megazords after class. If you ever argued over who got to be the Green Ranger at recess or practiced your jump kicks in the living room during the opening riff, you're our kind of people. Now, today we're digging into 15 weird facts you probably didn't know about the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Now, before we morph into it, hit like and subscribe to remember when for more deep dives into the shows you grew up on, and share this video with a friend who still yells, "It's Morphin' Time!" louder than they should. Now, let's get into the countdown with number 15. The audition was basically a martial arts Hunger Games. The 1992 casting search for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers looked less like an acting call and more like a regional karate championship. Haim Saban wasn't looking for trained actors, he wanted athletes who could memorize lines. This wasn't "can you cry on cue," it was more like "can you do a back handspring and then hit your mark?" And the response was massive. Walter Jones, who'd eventually land the role of the Black Ranger, later described showing up and seeing thousands of people at the open call. Somewhere around 500 actresses reportedly auditioned for the Yellow Ranger role alone, and over 800 actors had already been seen before Jones even got his audition slot. He'd been in Florida competing on Star Search and had to have his agent squeeze him in late. Amy Jo Johnson, who became the Pink Ranger, was a trained gymnast whose commercial acting teacher told her she should audition. Johnson later joked that none of them had any idea what they were doing. David Yost took a different approach. He wasn't a fighter, so for his Billy audition, he greased his hair down, put on a pair of glasses, buttoned his shirt wrong, and leaned hard into the nerdy character, and it worked. Then came the chemistry tests. Producers narrowed the field down and spent 3 days mixing and matching finalists into groups of 5, and here's the wildest casting story of the bunch. Austin St. John, the guy who became the Red Ranger, the face of the franchise, showed up on a $20 bet from a friend. He was 17, had 0 professional acting experience, and he didn't even realize he was supposed to memorize the monologue they'd given him the day before. He won the bet and reportedly still owes his buddy the $20. Number 14, Fox finally said yes after 8 years. Now, here's the part that blows my mind. This entire franchise, the Megazords, the theme song, the lunchbox wars at school, almost never happened. In 1984, music producer Haim Saban was on a business trip in Japan when he stumbled across a Super Sentai show called Chodenshi Bioman on his hotel TV. Spandex heroes, giant robots, rubber suit monsters, explosions every 5 minutes, and he saw it instantly, except no studio exec in America wanted it. By 1986, Saban had produced a pilot called Bioman and started shopping it to every network he could get a meeting with. The response was basically, It took 8 years. Most people would have given up after 8 months. But Saban kept refining the pitch, kept trying to convince executives that American kids wouldn't care where the fight footage came from as long as the robots were cool. Finally, in 1992, Fox Kids said,
"So let's do this thing!"
It came down to one person, Margaret Loesch, the new head of Fox Kids. Loesch already knew about Super Sentai from her time at Marvel Productions, where she'd seen Stan Lee try and fail to pitch an American adaptation years earlier. She saw what Saban saw. Her bosses, though, not so much. They reportedly threatened to fire her if the show flopped. She greenlit it anyway. Saban ditched the old Bioman footage, grabbed the latest Super Sentai series, Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger and built Mighty Morphin Power Rangers from the ground up. If Saban had given up in year 5, there would have been no Go-Go Power Rangers permanently living in your brain. Number 13, the theme song that shredded its way into history. Now, before you even saw a Ranger morph, you heard that riff. That theme is one of the most recognizable pieces of 90s media. The song was written and performed by Ron Wasserman, the same guy who gave us the X-Men the Animated Series theme, but if you check the original credits, you won't see his name, because he wasn't listed as Ron Wasserman. He wasn't listed as anything.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers!
Why? Saban reportedly didn't want their composers getting noticed and poached by higher-paying studios. And then there was the deadline. Saban showed Wasserman footage of the show, told him to use the word go, and said the theme had to be finished by the next morning. Saban Entertainment wanted him to use the word go, since Haim Saban had success using that lyric in the Inspector Gadget theme song, which was the first hit theme he and writing partner Shuki Levy were credited with. So Wasserman wrote it, performed it, and recorded the entire thing in about 2.5 hours. And here's the real kicker. Despite sounding like a full live band, almost everything, except for some lead guitar work added later, was recorded on a keyboard using preloaded drum and guitar sounds. Ron Wasserman didn't even play guitar. That wall of sound energy that made you air shred across your living room is pure synth magic. The keyboard work was so convincing, it even fooled Eddie Van Halen. Wasserman was at Eddie Van Halen's house when Eddie handed him a guitar and said he needed to learn the Power Rangers riff for his son Wolfgang. Wasserman walked over to the grand piano and said, "Don't kill me." Eddie's response? "All right, good job." What's even funnier, Wasserman's vocals were meant to be temporary, just a rough demo scratch take. Fox executives heard it and said,
"It was perfect. Perfect."
And honestly, Ron Wasserman deserves a plaque somewhere, even if they'd probably put someone else's name on it. Number 12, Spielberg did Saban's marketing for free. Jurassic Park hit theaters in June of 1993, and suddenly every kid on Earth could pronounce Velociraptor like they were defending a thesis. Dinosaurs were everywhere. 2 months later, in August of 1993, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers premiered on Fox Kids, a show built entirely around dinosaur-themed robots. Now, you might be thinking Haim Saban saw the Jurassic Park hype coming and made a genius strategic move. He didn't. He got lucky, like absurdly, impossibly lucky. When Saban finally got the green light from Fox Kids in 1992, he needed to pick which Super Sentai season to adapt. He grabbed the most current season available. Then Jurassic Park came along and turned every kid in America into a junior paleontologist right before a show full of dinosaur robots hit the airwaves. It was like the universe handed him a winning lottery ticket he didn't even know he bought. Now, think about the toy aisle in 1993 for a second. Jurassic Park toys were selling out everywhere. Parents were hunting them down like limited edition Beanie Babies, and when they couldn't find one, there sat a bright red Tyrannosaurus Dinozord, a yellow saber-toothed tiger, a blue Triceratops. They were still dinosaurs, just with helmets and lasers instead. Power Rangers slid right in and said, "Hey, your kid already loves dinosaurs. What if those dinosaurs were also giant robots that fought monsters?" By Christmas of 1994, Power Rangers had taken over everything. All because Saban grabbed the newest footage available, and Spielberg happened to make dinosaurs the center of the universe 2 months before the show aired. Jurassic Park lit the match. Power Rangers built a bonfire right next to it. Number 11, the White Ranger only exists because Japan killed Tommy. By season 2, the show had a good problem. Tommy was too popular. The Green Ranger merch was flying off the shelves. There was just one problem though. In Japan, he was already dead. The original Japanese series, Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger, didn't treat the Green Ranger like a temporary power loss storyline. His counterpart, Byorai, had a literal expiration date. When it burned out, he died. And once he died in their footage, that was it. No more fight scenes, no more transformation shots, nothing. So Saban had two options: lose the most popular character on television or get creative. Instead of retiring Tommy, Saban bought footage from the next Japanese series, Gosei Sentai Dai Ranger. and surgically inserted a brand new Ranger into the dinosaur team. That White Ranger suit, it wasn't made for Tommy. It was originally the Kiba Ranger. In Japan, the White Ranger was a 9-year-old boy. When he morphed, he grew to adult size. That's why the White Ranger in fight footage sometimes moves a little more playful or exaggerated compared to Tommy's very American, very disciplined martial arts style. You weren't imagining that difference either. It was literally a different show. Now, here's where Season 2 becomes a full-on Frankenstein situation. You've got the original 5 Rangers still wearing their dinosaur suits from Zoo Ranger, fighting alongside footage from an entirely different series, while cockpit shots show dinosaur helmets controlling mythological Chinese beasts. And the crazy part? Almost every time you see the White Ranger standing next to the other 5 Rangers in the same shot, that had to be filmed in California. There was no Japanese footage of those two teams together. American stunt teams had to recreate those interactions just to make it look seamless. So the question is, why not just switch everyone to the new Die Ranger suits? Because toys, that's why. The Die Ranger suits had a completely different look, and Saban was terrified that changing the dinosaur aesthetic at peak popularity would tank toy sales. So instead, they kept the dinosaur suits for 2 more years, even though the powers had already evolved. So the White Ranger era, it wasn't planned mythology, it was a full-on international kibosh job, stitching together 2 separate Japanese series to save 1 American character, and somehow, it worked. You thought it was destiny, but in reality, it was just editing. Number 10, Japan had to film extra footage just for American kids. Fox Kids originally ordered 40 episodes for Season 1. The show premiered in August of 1993, and by the time those 40 episodes were in the pipeline, the ratings were so massive that Fox came back and said, "We need 20 more." The original Japanese series Zoo Ranger only had 50 episodes, and Saban had already burned through nearly every usable monster battle and Megazord fight. So what did they do? They called Japan and said, "Hey, can you make more?" And Japan said,
Yes! Hell yeah!
Toei, the studio behind Super Sentai, actually filmed brand new fight footage specifically for the American version. They commissioned 25 new monster suits and filmed full Ranger-sized and Zord-sized battles for each one. Fans now call it ZU2 footage. An American adaptation of a Japanese show got so big that Japan went back into production to create custom content for American children. They actually studied the American characters and built personality details into the fight scenes just to make the footage feel seamless. That Zoo 2 footage kept Season 1 alive for those extra 20 episodes, and some of it even spilled over into early Season 2. Number 9, Power Rangers caused so much toy chaos, it inspired a Hollywood movie. By the holiday season of 1994, Power Rangers toys had gone from hard to find to a full-blown national crisis. Bandai had 16 factories running around the clock, and they still couldn't keep up. Stores limited purchases to 2 per customer. Parents camped out before stores opened. Some drove across state lines chasing rumors that a store had just gotten a shipment. To put this in terms that even our youngest viewers could understand, this was a full-on Labubu crisis. In California, a truckload of Power Rangers toys was stolen at gunpoint. A black market popped up at flea markets where 8-inch action figures that retailed for under $15 were going for $40. Saban's own VP of Legal Affairs went on record saying organized crime had gotten involved in counterfeiting the toys. By Christmas of 1994, Power Rangers merchandise had crossed $1 billion and captured roughly 40% of the action figure market. Parents were losing their minds. And one of those parents was a struggling screenwriter named Randy Cornfield. Cornfield and his in-laws had been trying to track down a Power Rangers figure for his son. Lines out the door, empty shelves. That experience was so ridiculous, he sat down and wrote a movie about it. That movie became Jingle All the Way.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes?
I'm trying to find a Troubleman doll.
Me too.
Producer Chris Columbus came on board after his own toy hunting nightmare trying to find a Buzz Lightyear for his kid. This movie starred Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sinbad as dads racing through stores on Christmas Eve, fighting other parents, dodging counterfeit toy rings, all for one action figure.
Hey, everybody! These 2 are looking for a Turbo Man!
And the fictional TV show within the movie, the one every kid was obsessed with? Color-coded heroes, villains that look like they wandered off the set of a Saban production. It was Power Rangers with the serial numbers filed off. The movie made $130 million worldwide, all because one dad couldn't find a plastic Red Ranger. Number 8, the mid-season walkout that shocked kids. Remember when you were watching Power Rangers and something suddenly felt off? Jason wouldn't turn around. Zack's voice sounded different. Trini kept standing in shadows like the camera was avoiding her. Well, at the absolute peak of Power Ranger mania, when toys were selling out everywhere and the franchise was pulling in over $1 billion a year in merchandise, the original cast was reportedly making around, get this, $600 a week, non-union production. So when Austin St. John, Walter Jones, and Thuy Trang tried to renegotiate for better pay and union protection, Saban chose the cheaper option. They replaced them mid-season. The episodes weren't finished, but instead of pausing production, the show basically stitched the rest together with TV duct tape and hoped nobody would notice. Body doubles were everywhere, always from behind or in wigs and conveniently in the shadow. The voices were near sound-alikes. Suddenly, Jason sounded like he'd hit a very confusing puberty overnight. Even if we couldn't explain it back then, every kid on the playground knew something was wrong. This went on for about 7 episodes before the show finally addressed it. And the explanation? The reason 3 of the original Rangers were leaving mid-war with Lord Zed? A peace conference in Switzerland. When Rocky, Adam, and Aisha finally arrived, the 2-part power transfer tried to smooth it over. The original trio appeared almost entirely in full Ranger suits, then the helmets came off. New faces, new era, no real goodbye though. Okay, we're going to take a quick pause because when you and your friends played Power Rangers on the playground, which Ranger were you every single time? And did anyone else get stuck as the monster? Tell us in the comments, and while you're down there, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss our next trip back to the TV glory that was the 90s. Also, to put it out there, I was the Blue Ranger. I was a nerd. Alright, now let's get into number 7, the Black Ranger who changed the game. If you remember the Black Ranger's unmorphed fight scenes, you remember they looked different from everybody else's. There was rhythm to them, flair, a looseness that made the other Rangers look like they were reading from a textbook. That was hip-hop Keto. Jones created it himself. It was a fighting style that fused breakdancing, hip-hop movement, and martial arts into something the show had never seen. Muhammad Ali shuffles, body rolls, pivot kicks. He developed it during the audition process and kept refining it throughout the show. It was his tribute to 90s hip-hop culture, and it's a big part of why he got cast in the first place. Saban wanted someone who could bring a different energy to the action, and Jones walked in and invented one on the spot. Now, here's the part of his legacy that goes beyond choreography. Walter Jones grew up in Detroit, and when he was cast as the Black Ranger in 1993, he became what's widely recognized as the first live-action black superhero on American television. Jones has always understood the weight of that. He's always talked about what it meant for black kids to turn on the TV and see someone who looked like them morphing into a superhero and saving the world alongside a diverse team. Now, there's a question that's followed the show since day one. Was it a problem that the black actor was cast as the Black Ranger and the Asian actress as the Yellow Ranger? In April of 2025, Tony Oliver, who was head writer on the original series, said publicly that the color-coded casting was such a mistake. He said an assistant flagged it during production, but at the time nobody was thinking about the optics. Jones responded on Instagram. His take? The opposite. He acknowledged the conversation but pushed back on the framing. He said calling it a mistake dismisses the impact the role had on millions of fans who saw themselves represented on screen for the first time. He called the role a milestone and an honor. And for what it's worth, Jones has said he's never had a problem with the black suit. He thought it looked cool. He wanted that one. Now, here's a detail that was always right there on screen, even if the show never once acknowledged it. Walter Jones is missing the middle finger on his left hand. He lost it in a firearm accident when he was 4 years old. The camera mostly worked around it, but if you go back and watch, you can spot it. He performed every fight scene, every flip, and every hip-hop Keto combo with 9 fingers, and it never slowed him down. After leaving Power Rangers over pay and contract disputes, Jones didn't completely cut ties with the franchise. He came back to do voice work, playing the monster Nightmare in the Power Rangers Lost Galaxy episode Dream Battle and voicing the Machine Empire General Garrick in the Wild Force Anniversary episode Forever Red. He was actually the first former Ranger to return in a voice-only villain role setting a precedent other cast members would follow. Then, in 2023, nearly 30 years after his exit, Jones officially returned as Zack Taylor in the Netflix 30th anniversary special Once and Always. Same character, same morph, full circle. Number 6, Zordon was filmed for 5 hours, and that was it. Zordon, the giant floating head who basically ran the command center, appeared in almost every episode of early Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. David J. Fielding, the original face of Zordon, was physically filmed for about 1 day. They shaved his head, put him in makeup, and shot a bunch of facial expressions from different angles. Probably a few teenagers with attitude looks. That was it, and the audition wasn't much more involved. Fielding later recalled that he expected a cattle call, but when he showed up, it was just him and one other guy. They picked Fielding because of the voice he used. He'd read the character description of a 10,000-year-old wizard trapped in a time warp and decided Zordon should sound like a father figure.
I'm afraid there is no time for that. The Premator is about to destroy Angel Grove Harbor.
For that one-day shoot, Fielding was paid $150. That's $75 an hour at the non-union rate with a 2-hour minimum session. His total earnings for Zordon, less than $1,000. His words, not ours. For a character that appeared in over 150 episodes across multiple seasons, and because Fielding was never called back to film more footage, production did what early Power Rangers did best. They recycled it. That same footage was looped, reversed, zoomed, stretched across years of television. If you ever noticed Zordon's mouth not quite matching what he was saying, that slightly off, almost uncanny feeling, now you know why. And here's where it gets even stranger. After Fielding left the show and moved out of Los Angeles, the character was voiced by Robert L. Manahan, who took over mid-season 1 and continued all the way through Power Rangers in Space. So, for the vast majority of Zordon's run, you've got one actor's silent facial loops from a single afternoon, paired with a completely different actor's voice trying to match the movements of a face that was never saying those words to begin with. Number 5, Bryan Cranston was there before he was Walter White. Long before Breaking Bad made him the scariest chemistry teacher in America, Bryan Cranston was voicing rubber suit monsters on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Goodbye, Power Rangers.
Yeah, Cranston had been doing freelance voiceover and dubbing work at Saban Entertainment for years. Foreign films, cartoons from all over the world, he was a regular at the studio, grinding through whatever gigs came through the door. He voiced 2 Monster of the Week villains in Season 1, Snizzard and Twin Man.
Farewell, Power Brats.
Cranston was making about $50 an hour and working 2 to 3 hours per session. He said it was fantastic money for freelance voice work in the early 90s. So while we were arguing over who got to be the Red Ranger at recess, Bryan Cranston was in a booth hissing into a microphone for rent money. The original Blue Ranger, played by David Yost, was named Billy Cranston. The producers named the character after Bryan as a nod to his regular voice work at the studio. He found out years later when someone mentioned it to him, and he confirmed it during a Reddit AMA that it was true. In 2017, Cranston returned to the franchise in the reboot film, this time not as a monster, but as Zordon. And unlike the original floating head in a tube, this time Cranston physically performed the role through motion capture. In that version's mythology, Zordon had originally been the Red Ranger millions of years ago. So, the guy who once voiced a snake monster for $50 an hour came back 2 decades later as the team's ancient lead, who also happened to be the original Red Ranger. From Monster of the Week to Mentor of the Rangers. That might be the best full circle moment in franchise history. Now, if only Saban was hiring now. Anyway, number 4, Lord Zed was too scary for his own show. For the entire first season, Rita Repulsa was the big bad of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
What you put in your body is important, and he's about to get the special PETA from Rita!
And she was fine. She yelled a lot, she threw her wand, she was basically a villain on a loop. So when season 2 needed to raise the stakes, the producers did something they'd never done before. They created a villain from scratch. Every monster, every henchman, even Rita herself, they were all recycled from the Japanese Super Sentai footage. But Lord Zed? He was the first villain designed entirely for the American show. No Japanese counterpart, no borrowed footage, 100% homegrown nightmare fuel. And that wasn't just a creative choice, it was a practical one. By season 2, Saban was burning through the last of the Japanese footage and needed a villain who could share the Moon Palace set with the American actors without needing to be matched to anything from Japan. and they did not hold back on the design. The character was brought to life by Global Effects Inc., and the result looked like someone had taken a human body, peeled off all the skin, wrapped the exposed muscles in a chrome exoskeleton, and topped it off with an exposed brain and a metal faceplate. The Menace was a 50-50 collaboration. Edwin Neal, who you might know better as the hitchhiker from the original 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre, wore the suit and provided all of Zed's imposing physical presence. And then there was the voice. Robert Axelrod, who also voiced Finster on the show, gave Zed that deep, commanding, gravelly delivery dripping with contempt. Zed's scenes in the Lunar Palace had their own dark gothic atmosphere and a dedicated theme that made Rita's lair feel like a birthday party by comparison. When Zed showed up in the Mutiny Part 1, he immediately banished Rita into a space dumpster, stripped Goldar of his wings, destroyed the Dinozords, and basically announced that playtime was over. After Zed's first few episodes aired, parent groups started complaining to Saban Entertainment and the Fox Kids network. Their concern was that Lord Zed was too scary and too evil for a children's show. There were never any official reports of kids actually being terrified. The complaints came from parents, not from the audience the show was built for, but in the 90s, that was enough. Saban listened, and over the course of season 2, Zed got slowly defanged. First, the writer started making his plans a bit goofier. Then they brought Rita back, the very villain he'd banished in his debut, and had her slip a love potion into his recharge machine while he was asleep. Zed woke up, fell madly in love, proposed on the spot, and the two got married in a 3-part wedding arc. The Emperor of Evil became a lovesick husband who called her Ritakins. His gothic theme music was also gone, replaced with generic background noise. By season 3, the Moon Palace had basically become a dysfunctional sitcom. Zed and Rita argued constantly, and once Rita's brother Rito Revolto showed up and started calling the Emperor of Evil Ed and Lord Ed to his face, whatever was left of Zed's intimidation factor officially flatlined. The guy who used to destroy Megazords with orbital lightning strikes was now losing to a bunch of teenagers on a weekly basis, while his in-laws made fun of him. Number 3, Rita's voice was born out of pure spite. That voice, that shrieking, raspy, migraine-inducing cackle from Rita Repulsa,
The time device is ready. It's time to pick a monster.
it almost didn't exist. Barbara Goodson had been voicing characters for Saban Entertainment for years. She was a regular in the rotation, so when it came time to cast Rita Repulsa, they just handed her the role and told her to play it like the Wicked Witch of the West. So she did. Then Saban ran a focus group, and the feedback came back. Rita wasn't scary enough. Instead, they fired her. No redirect, no second take, they just let her go and opened up auditions to find someone else. Goodson, understandably, was not thrilled. She pushed back and asked to be at least included in the audition pool. They said,
Hey, you do whatever you like.
So Goodson walked into that booth angry. She dropped the polished Wicked Witch approach and went harder, raspier, angrier, like something cracked, and she just decided to leave it that way, and it worked. She got the part back, and that voice, born out of genuine annoyance at being fired for following directions, became the sound of Rita Repulsa for the next 5 years. That voice was brutal to perform though. Goodson has said longer sessions, some running up to 8 hours, could leave her hoarse for days. She'd learned to schedule auditions for softer characters before her Rita sessions because once she'd been screaming as the Empress of Evil, the lighter stuff wasn't happening. On top of that, she had to sync every line to Machiko Soga's mouth movements from the original Japanese footage, lip movements that were never meant for English words. And she kept doing it season after season, both feature films, through Rita's marriage to Lord Zed, through the purification arc at the end of In Space. She even voiced a handful of the early monsters along the way because one throat-destroying villain wasn't enough. Then in 2023, 30 years after that angry re-audition, she came back for the Netflix anniversary special Once and Always, voicing a robotic version of the character.
Not bad. I'll pass through this portal and give years of knowledge to my younger self.
The voice that almost got her replaced became one of the most recognizable villain performances of the entire decade, all because a focus group said she wasn't scary enough. And she took that personally. Number 2, the Yellow Ranger secret you can't unsee. If you look at the original 1993 suits, the Pink Ranger has a skirt, the Yellow Ranger, no skirt. Here's what was actually happening. In the original Japanese series, the Yellow Ranger wasn't a woman. He was a guy named Boy. played by actor Takumi Hashimoto, a male performer in a suit designed for a male body. Meanwhile, the Pink Ranger was the only female on the Zoo Ranger team, so she got the skirt. When Saban adapted the footage for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, they wanted better gender balance, so they cast Thuy Trang as Trini, the Yellow Ranger. But they kept using the Japanese fight footage, which means every time Trini morphed, she became boy. Every other Ranger switched performers but stayed the same gender. Yellow was a girl in the hallway and a guy in the suit. And you could see it. The suit didn't have a skirt to soften the silhouette. There was nothing to mask the difference, so in the morphed footage, Yellow Ranger had a visibly different build from Trini. A broader frame, flatter chest, and male anatomical contours. Trang's voice was dubbed over the footage, so you'd hear her coming out of a body that clearly wasn't hers. The production just banked on the fact that helmets hide everything. They mostly did. You may not have consciously processed the difference as a kid, but your brain registered that something about Yellow looked different from Pink after morphing, and now you know why. Number 1, the Ranger who refused to leave. Now, come on y'all. You knew there was only one choice for this spot, and you knew it the second we started counting down. Tommy Oliver. When Mighty Morphin Power Rangers introduced the Green Ranger in the 5-part Green with Evil arc in 1993, the character had an expiration date. Jason David Frank was told up front, you're here for about 10 episodes and then your character dies off the show. By his own account, he would have been thrilled just to get one episode out of it. Instead, fan mail exploded.
All this will belong to Empress Rita once I and my Zord put down the Power Rangers.
The studio got flooded with actual physical letters from children begging Saban to bring him back. So they pivoted, and that pivot nearly broke another show. See, by the time the fan response hit, JDF had already moved on. He'd filmed a pilot for a series called Cybertron, later renamed VR Troopers, where he was cast as the lead, Adam Steele. He was supposed to be the star of a whole different franchise. So Saban did their best NFL impression and pulled off a trade. Jason David Frank came back to the Power Rangers. Meanwhile, Brad Hawkins, the actor who was originally supposed to replace JDF as the new White Ranger, ended up taking over the VR Troopers lead instead. Tommy was so big, he reshuffled the casting of 2 shows at once. And from there, he never really left. Tommy came back as the White Ranger, became the team leader, and kept going, through Zeo as the Red Ranger, then Turbo. When Frank finally stepped away mid-season in 1997, he'd played 4 different Rangers across 4 consecutive series. But that wasn't the end. In 2002, he came back for Forever Red, the 10th anniversary Wild Force crossover that assembled every Red Ranger in franchise history. Tommy suited up as the Red Zeo Ranger one more time. 2 years later, he had a full return. Power Rangers Dino Thunder 2004, this time as Dr. Tommy Oliver, paleontology teacher at Reefside High, mentoring a new generation of Rangers, and then bonding with the Black Dino Gem to become the Black Dino Thunder Ranger. That wasn't a cameo. That was the franchise saying, this is our anchor. Green Ranger, White Ranger, Zeo Ranger Red, Red Turbo Ranger, Black Dino Thunder Ranger. 5 Rangers, 1 guy. And here's what separated him from every other Ranger who came and went. It never felt like a gimmick. JDF was a legitimate martial artist. He trained in Shotokan, Taekwondo, Judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Muay Thai, among others. He created his own system, Toso Kune-Do, blending the most practical elements of each style. He was inducted into the World Karate Union Hall of Fame. When he threw a kick in an unmorphed fight scene, it had weight, that intensity, that ki energy. You can't fake that. Every strike he threw carried decades of real training behind it. His final live-action appearance came in 2018, Dimensions in Danger, the 25th anniversary special in Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel. That episode gave Tommy the Master Morpher, a device that lets him cycle through every Ranger form he'd ever held, Green, White, Red Zeo, Black Dino Thunder, all in one fight. It also quietly revealed that Tommy had married Kat and had a son named JJ. After being told he was there for 10 episodes, Jason David Frank appeared in 257, more than any Ranger in history, and it wasn't even close. While some actors distanced themselves from the roles that made them famous, JDF leaned all the way in. Conventions, fan events, hours in line meeting people who had grown up watching him. He knew what Tommy meant to that generation, and he never treated it like something to outgrow. Unfortunately, on November 19th, 2022, Jason David Frank passed away. He was 49. The Power Rangers franchise honored him in Once and Always, the 30th anniversary Netflix special, where Tommy appeared one final time, suited up as the Green Ranger alongside his original teammates. And there you have it, 15 weird and wild facts about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Which fact surprised you the most? Which one did we miss? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit like if this brought back memories of plastic morphers and badly timed karate kicks in the living room. Subscribe for more trips back to the shows we grew up on. And share this video with someone who wore their Green Ranger costume until it basically disintegrated. Until next time, it's Morphin' time! This is Remember When.